There are so many ways to get your training, and there are so many ways to train others these days. Regardless of what you're looking at and what you're looking for, there are a couple of things that you should really keep in mind when picking out the training that will suit you the best. So sit back, stay tuned, we're going to go for a ride.
This is a really great topic, and it's actually kind of timely because I have just been kind of reviewing some of the things that I've done in the past and how I'm approaching this specific thing now for myself. It seems like everywhere you look, there is a class, a course, some kind of online something that you can jump into to train on this or that, and we see the ads all over the social feeds. And while there are so many, it's important to kind of put some guidelines around it and some context to it, that it's okay that there are so many different types of training because each of us learns very differently from each other. And having so many things out there also means that there's the opportunity to find a thing that's going to work for you. And sometimes it's multiple things teaching the same thing, but they're kind of hitting you from different sides. But it's also important to filter out the ones that are not really that valuable, that are really maybe a little more tactical and not necessarily teaching you the why or the how or the sort of the fundamentals of how something actually works. I think that's part of the key in this conversation. So, Brian, where do you want to start with this? I can certainly talk a little bit about my background, what I've discovered about myself, and what has actually changed how I approach learning and training and all that. But what do you think?
Well, I'd love to hear, I think they'd love to hear it. I kind of know a bit about it, but the one thing you got to keep in mind is we're not just coming at this from people in business or media. Johnny and I both have taught on both the high school and the college level. So we've had the experience of understanding the various mechanisms at play here on each end, on both the teaching end and on the learning end. So as we go into that, and I do think it's important for them to hear where you're coming from, but it's important to keep in mind that we're looking at this through a slightly different lens than most people who are sitting here trying to teach you something. We're sitting here saying, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, and maybe if you reframe the way you're looking at the tutorials you're receiving or the ones you may be giving, you're going to be in a better place.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any better way to really understand how different people learn than being in a room, an actual live room with 20 high school or college students trying to learn what you're looking to teach them, and you have to reach each of them in a very different way, which is really fascinating. I can tell you that I guess I could say I am a learning addict. I've always used learning and training as a way to sort of put myself in a place where I felt like I was moving ahead, where I was actually making progress. I was always busy. I'm training on this, I'm training on that. And what you discover is that when you're putting in all that time and energy into a ton of training, it's actually a disguise for not doing the work you need to actually push yourself forward as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a business owner, right? Your business itself. And there's an important concept that I also kind of picked up on during this time, which is this idea of just-in-case learning versus just-in-time learning. And I was always in the just-in-case side. And really quickly, what that means is just-in-case is, I'll go personal here. I wanted to learn Unreal Engine. I wanted to learn how to master After Effects. I wanted to understand everything about funnels, and I wanted to learn everything about... And what I was doing was layering training upon training upon training. One of my calendars at one point had maybe 3 different training programs in a single day with client work in between those, as if my brain could actually handle learning. It's like learning 3 different languages, really. You can only do one at a time. So that's just in case. Well, someday I'm going to use Unreal Engine because I really want to. I want to be in that world. And, someday I'm going to, so I might as well learn it now. Or let me get all the materials I need to learn it and put it up on a shelf for when I'm ready to learn it, which is the worst, right? Because things go out of date, all that stuff, but you're paying the money now. just in time is basically lined up with, you got to align yourself with what are the goals that you're trying to reach, and then you find the specific tools, the training tools that are going to help you get there. So a lot of times, if let's say I want to learn how to film a specific type of shot or light a specific type of scene, well, I can set that up as like a quarterly goal for myself and then go out and find the resources that can help me learn that specific tool or that specific approach. And then the important part is to then also give yourself the time to implement what you're learning so that you can see where you're making mistakes. The other part of the learning addiction is that you're just constantly taking in information but never actually using it, never actually implementing it, which makes it just knowledge in your head that doesn't really go anywhere. So it's all about kind of managing your time. It's about understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve and then lining your training up to specifically fit that goal. And I was on the other side of that. So I'm loving that this is the topic for today's episode.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned a lot of great things there, and I think we're all guilty of it. The thing we're definitely all guilty of is going and learning the specific tool and the specific mechanism for that tool at that moment. We're really less interested, and we shouldn't be, but we're less interested in understanding the why or how behind that. And a perfect example is Photoshop. Photoshop is an amazing tool that has gone through many, 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 many iterations, and now you can push a button and have X, Y, and Z happen for you automatically. Circle this, and this will happen. What happens if you don't have that piece of the tool? Well, there are many of us who've cut our teeth early on and know the concepts behind what these tools are doing. So if you don't have the automatic AI button to do X, Y, or Z, you know how to go and do it manually. You know how to go and tweak it. You know the difference between your curves and your balances. All these different tools. So there's that element in it as well. We're learning what we need as we need it, but we're not necessarily learning the construct behind what is being done. So that's sometimes part of the thing we have to look out for. Do you want to just learn the tool, or do you want to learn that significant concept behind the tool? Neither one is right, neither one is wrong, but one sets you up in a much different way than the other one.
Yeah, I think that works really great too. If we're talking specifically about, let's say, cameras, it's the same thing. Auto's fantastic, but if you can, get to really understand how a camera captures an image, the fundamentals of that, man, that really sets you up for so much goodness when all these new tools finally come out. And even, I would say, even on the AI side, as you're, if you're getting into some, image generation and that sort of thing, there are some fundamentals that if you know them, they're just going to set you up to do some really great things, regardless of the tool you're using. So that's a really great point for it. I think one of the things that...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please go for it.
I'm not going to harsh on people who, push a button and set it and forget it.
Sure.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. However, it doesn't have the longevity of the concepts behind what you're doing. But if you know what's behind what you're doing, and suddenly you're in a position where you don't have that button, you don't have that piece of kit, you don't have whatever it is, do you really know what you're doing? And that's, I think, the difference right there. And so when you're teaching or when you're learning, what is it you're trying to achieve overall? Not at the moment. What is that learning about? And where are you going with it? And again, both are okay, but one sets you up very differently.
Yeah, there's a great saying out there. I think, and I hope I'm going to get this right. I think it's the Navy SEALs that use this term. Go slow to go fast. And to me, that's a little bit of that, take the time to understand the fundamentals, and then you can jump into tactics. It's, the whole idea of strategy before tactics. And I think that's one of the danger points here is there are so many training products out there, so many online courses that you really do have to become good at filtering who are the ones who are, teaching those fundamentals and not just a series of tactics. I see so many ads for things of, hey, buy our entire library of things that worked for $1, or for, just $49, you get everything that we used. And the thing is, if you're in a place where I really need to launch a lot of things, you're going to buy it, but you're going to quickly realize that these were things that worked for them over the last 5 years. And now they're done with them, and now they can sell them at, rock bottom prices and have this entire new legion of people join in. And they may have some success, but more than likely they're not. And I think that's the dangerous part of training modules and online is really kind of being able to filter that out and jump in with the ones who are really there to help you get ahead and make something happen for yourself.
Now, that said, there's a couple ways you can easily identify the method that works for you, the method that may work for your team, but definitively the instructor that's going to work best. And part of it is understanding that there's multiple ways of learning. You've got your literal and conceptual learners, which means I speak, you understand. You get it, or you see the concept that I'm putting out there and you can learn from it. So there's a literal component to that lecture back and forth. There's the experiential learner, which means you put the tool in their hand, you stand over their shoulder, and they get to play and see what it does and see how hard it is or how easy it is to get the results, either from the concept or from the literal instruction. On the final end, you get the synthesis learner, the person who can take it and has to say, oh, I've heard it, we've done it in class, and now I have to go out and do my own version of that. Synthesis is absolutely the strongest and what we're all aiming to have our people understand, but not everybody learns the same way. I can sit with my staff, and some of them are going to learn, and this brings up the important point. Some of them are going to say, oh, I get the concept behind that. Yeah, okay, that's great. Others are, oh, if I do A to B to C to D, I get it. Cool. Those are your literal. Then you sit them down, and they're trying it with you, giving them step-by-step instruction how to set up the 3-point lighting for this particular situation, or how to build the donut in 3D. And that's wonderful. The best part is when you say, now, go and do it on your own. Go set up something outside. Set up something in the storeroom over there. Or don't build a donut, build a pancake. It's taking what you've learned and synthesizing it to correction. Now, when we were teaching, I know this is true because we've talked about it, there are some students who, and working into my lecture, there are students who are like, but you've said this already. Yeah. And there are other students who are like, huh? A good instructor will be able to literally give 3 or 4 different versions of the same lesson. Mm-hmm. And only a small fraction will be like, you've just taught that already. Small fraction. Everybody else hears it for the first time one of these different ways. So an instructor who can hit upon that conceptual, that literal, that experiential, and that synthesis of learning is going to be one that you're going to want to teach your department, more than one person. Mm. However, if you can identify what works for you personally, feel free to go after just the one version of that you want. You might be great sitting in a lecture hall, hearing. Cool. You're done. You might be the type of person who needs to get their hands on that equipment. Great. Go with somebody who is going to literally stand with you. You might be somebody who needs somebody to stand with you, and then you go synthesize it, and they tell you where you're doing wrong and you're doing it right. So you've got to identify that for yourself. But when you're working for a team, or when you're trying to teach to a team, you absolutely have to be able to hit upon all of these different ways of learning. If you don't, you are going to have staff members, you're going to have a department, you're going to have potentially clients out there who don't understand. And it's not because you're not doing a good job teaching. It's because you're not doing a good job differentiating the different levels and stratuses of the way people learn into your lesson plan. I would rather have everybody come to me and say, well, you said this thing 3 times, of course we're going to get it. I'd rather have that. That means I've got a group that can learn anyway. That's never the case. Right. Never the case. There's always somebody who struggles because they don't fit neatly into any of these categories, and you have to figure out how to synthesize everything around that. And
Hmm.
so get an instructor, or if you're selling tutorials or teaching a team, get with the program and try to figure out the different ways people can learn from you. And don't think that they're all going to learn the same. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I've sort of, I've sort of blown everything at you, and I haven't done it in 3 or 4 different lesson plan kind of ways because I don't want to
Right,
bore you
right.
here. But
Well,
if it works for you, go with it. If
yeah.
you're doing it for somebody else, you need to go wider.
Well, I think there's a bigger part of this too, which I think is this. There are soft skills around learning too, which is for you personally. You have to have an awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
An awareness about yourself, how you learn, how you implement in the best way, how you really pick up a new skill and then run with it, right? That's an awareness for yourself. But on the flip side, that awareness, this all of this ties into also how you deal with the outside world as well. So, forgetting for a second teaching anyone, even when you're going off on a sales call, when you're off to meet with a client about a project, or you're looking to discuss the concept behind an idea you have for them, and you're trying to pitch this concept and get them to buy in, there's an awareness that you have to very quickly discern what type of learner are they. And the more you kind of dive into this world and really become aware about this, it helps in every part of your life. Because even though you might be a learner right now, you are a teacher in all of these other places every single day. And that's truly important. That's why I think like lifelong learning is so critical to just to our
Huge.
life in general. Forget about our careers, all that. And the other big part of this too, and you said it, there are the people, the synthesis. That's the part where you really want. And I've been there before, where a box comes into our studio, and there are people who have to read the instructions. There are people who go online to find the video of how to, and then you have the, you'll always have that one who just rips open the box and just starts to see how things fit together, uh, and just starts to play with it. And you can see it in a crew all the time. And so it's important to be able to discuss with each of them, and then also teach them how to kind of discuss with each other so that each of them gets the learning. Implementation is, I think, the biggest part of learning, because then there are a lot of people who jump into teaching when all they've done is learn. They haven't learned and implemented to then teach. And that last piece, oh my goodness, the ones that are out there with the training modules and those programs who are doing it for a living, who actually do this day in and day out. Lighting as an example. Lighting is, you can tell someone that opening, opening a door and letting in a room full of puppies is like, oh, it's going to be so amazing, until you release a room full of puppies and realize that there are so many variables that could go wrong in this. Uh, the same is true with lighting. You can teach, on a piece of paper, you can show what a 3-point lighting diagram looks like. You can show how to light a room versus lighting the person. You can do all of that. But once you get to location and you see the sheer number of variables that can happen in your lighting system, you have to understand the fundamentals of lighting in order for that learning to really kick in and for the skill to really begin to grow. And that's why having someone who learned, who also did, and is now teaching, those are the ones who bring new nuances to the training. And they're out there. There's so many great programs out there. I mean, we're in some of them. I'm in a bunch of them. You know what I mean? So they're out there. You just remember to always look for the ones that are really looking to really teach you on a very deep level. I think that's my point with all that.
And I think for me, I agree. Find out what works for you. If you go through a program and you've learned something, because they just said the same thing over and over again, they most likely didn't. It's how you're learning the information. They're saying the same thing differently, and they're doing that specifically to hit upon these different learners. That's a good program. And that's a good program. I mean, unless they're literally saying the same thing over and over and over again. But usually if you go back and reflect upon it, they're not. That's a good program. And that's one that maybe is something you'd want to introduce somebody else to, because it may actually be able to hit upon them no matter how they learn. And I can't stress that enough. we are sitting here in our unique field, and to get specific about it, one of the things that I used to love blowing my students' minds with was, okay, here's a room. Here's a room of mirrors. How are you going to film somebody trying on clothing when there's 3 mirrors in an angle that cover almost the entire store? How are you going to film it? Boom, minds get blown. It's those who can synthesize what they've learned and then adapt it. And at that moment, you've got them. And that's not a huge percentage of the students. Most of them at that moment realize, oh, there's a lot more I have to know. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. That too is huge, that feedback. So if you're in a program and it's a dynamic program, it's somebody maybe you pulled into your facility to teach, feedback with the instructor is very helpful. Feedback will help them very quickly assess whether or not you folks are as good as you think you are, if you're not as skilled as you think you are, or somewhere in between. So that dialogue is also helpful, unless it's a pre-recorded, program you're buying into, in which case, look for the one where you sit there and smile at the end of it, knowing, I get this. I really understand this. That's the gut punch. That's the one that makes you say, yeah, this is the right program for me.
And I think it's important too. I see a lot of chatter out there. There are those who will say, well, I can't believe people are still buying courses, and all of this is available for free on YouTube. And it is, a lot of this stuff is, but also remember that YouTube has a lot of content. A lot of times folks are perhaps even leaving a few key things out that you may discover once you start to try to implement something you're learning. And it's not through any fault of their own. They're just, perhaps they know it so well that they forget this one critical step. They're not necessarily coming at it from that kind of teaching methodology. So certain things are left out, and then you're left trying to find other things. And so you can get it for free. But I think it's important to invest in yourself. I think it's important to invest in not only your career but your life, and improving your place within the world, all of that good stuff, making, just being better every day about who you are and the craft that you do. I think that's important. It keeps us sharp. And, the level at which you're going to invest it's going to be dependent on where you're trying to get to and all of that. And the other thing is, remember that sometimes the best training that you might have are things you already have. Sometimes you don't need to buy something new. There's one program that I'm in right now. It's actually on the personal growth side. This is my 5th time through, and somebody asked me one day, it's like, well, if it's so good, how come you do your 5th time through? Why didn't it work the first time? And they kind of came at it with that. I was that's actually the tone they used, and I said, well, actually, I can answer that. This the first time I really didn't go through it with a lot of great intention, and then years 2 through 5, I was actually finding that I was a different person each time I was going through. So things that, even though a lot of it was repeated because it was recorded, there was new piece of information that I had heard every single time, but it hit me differently every single time. And so there are things to learn by repeating programs you might already have, and just remembering that when you do pick up some of these training programs or books, reread some of the books that you have. Go at it, make a plan for yourself. If you have a book, I have a book on lighting, perhaps that could be a goal that I set, where I say, all right, I'm going to reread this book, and I'm actually going to set up some exercises, and I'm going to go actually do them, and that's the best way to learn, when you can get your hands on something, learn the fundamentals.
You just fell into the trap. You just fell into the. That's the best way of learning. No, that's the best way for many.
Yes,
it's the best
exactly,
way for many, and it's
for,
not always
and for me, that's how I learn.
And that is how you learn. I will say that, and I know we're going to probably wrap this up shortly, but the best experience I ever had was when we sent you out to New York. You worked with a renowned television production crew, and you came back more jazzed than I had ever seen you, because it literally wasn't sitting there, sitting on your hands. You had the lecture portion. You had the conceptual and the literal. You had the hands-on. You had the synthesis. I don't know if you realize it now, but that was the ideal teaching environment. You
That was
had
perfect.
everything
Yes,
laid out in front
everything.
of you. And when you
Yeah.
came back, you were that excitement
Yeah.
was not only infectious, but lasted for a very, very, very long. We're going on years.
Years.
So
Yeah.
a good program, a good
Yeah.
course, heck, even a good experience in reading, as you said, reading a book on lighting. Whatever the experience is, should stay with you. You shouldn't
Yeah.
turn it off. You might forget a fundamental, but you shouldn't turn it off and it leaves your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is what I saw when you came back. It stuck with you, and you were excited to share what you had experienced, and you did it in all the ways that were needed for our entire staff. So
Yeah. That was great.
it's out there.
And I love that I fell into the trap, by the way. Isn't that great? I fell in.
We all
It's
do.
so
We all
easy. It's so easy to fall in, and that's the thing. And by the way, that you brought a smile to my face remembering that, because I still to this day there are still things that I pull from that and go like, all right, what's something that I can do that's outside of the normal and all that. And it all comes from that class, and I that was amazing. That was amazing.
So when we talk about reframe, everybody, and reframing your thoughts and approaches, this too is a reframe. When Johnny came back, there were a couple of pieces of information that stuck with everybody, different pieces to different staff members. For me, it was about how to, and I don't mean it the way it sounds, how to get this piece of kit to duplicate the look of that piece of kit. That was an instructional moment for me, because suddenly limits were ripped, Band-Aids were taken off of the wound, and you start looking at your own productions very, very differently. I didn't learn what he learned. I didn't experience what he experienced, but that one piece of information he shared with me that stuck with me is the fundamental with how we make our equipment last for an exceptionally long time in a very, very, very competitive market without always having to buy the top brand new gear as it's released. And it came from way back when. So there are lessons that still can provide the fundamentals and the groundwork for everything you do from here on in. And that's why when I talked about learning a tool or learning the fundamental behind the tool, it's a very different thing. And it's okay, either one. But the fundamental behind the tool keeps you going a lot further, a lot faster, and you don't have to rely on constantly picking up the internet to find one tip to get you to the next step.
Yeah.
You already know the fundamental. So
Yeah,
that's where I'm going to bow
amazing.
out. Yeah, that's where
That's
I'm going to bow
amazing.
out, because I can beat it to death in this case.
Yeah. It's in your blood, though, Brian. That's what I love. It's in your blood. Yeah, I'll just wrap by saying that I think intentionality, when you're going on that approach to learn something, do it with intent. Know why you're doing it. Find the right ones that fit you. Find a couple, because they're going to say the same thing but in slightly different ways, and one may hit the other. The biggest part is to implement. Is don't just learn. Don't just fill your head with knowledge. Actually do. And the other side of that is, don't be afraid to make mistakes, to fail, to, I go back to lighting. Somebody might be training you on a shot and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. And then you go to do it and it's like, what happened? And that's okay, because the iteration of that and the muscle memory that you build by continuously repeating and trying to get to a place where you make it happen, that's where I think, for me, that's where some of the best learning happens. So that's where it really grows exponentially. You learn it, you start here, and then as you implement and do and make mistakes and grow, and the next thing you know, it's like, boom. And so implement, and then don't be afraid to make those mistakes, and then just keep going, keep trying it till you get it. So,
Huge.
yeah, love this. Cool. Lifelong learning, man. Let's do it.
You have to.
You have to. Yeah.
The world is not stagnant. You got to just keep up.
You got to keep up. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for being on here. If there are any topics that you want us to cover, hit us up in the comments below. Let us know how we did. Did you like the episode? Would you rather we go in a different direction? I don't know. Let us know. We're looking to learn. See what I did there? We're looking to learn from you. So hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Stay safe, stay healthy.